about the shape of the Earth and Earth's orbit around the sun.
Okay, I would disagree strongly that I don't think there was ever a time that the church taught the earth was flat. That's been researched thoroughly, and it's just simply not true. The Bible teaches very clearly in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, that the Lord sits upon the circle of the earth. I think Christians that read their Bible have always known it was round. I don't care what Luther or anybody else taught. I care what does the Bible teach. There may have been a few people who taught that. They were simply wrong, because the Bible clearly teaches the earth is round. As far as the geocentric theory, I am a heliocentric centrist, okay? I taught earth science for years. I am pretty firmly convinced the sun is in the center, not the earth. But there's a surprising number of people today, scientists today, who are still geocentrists. I disagree with them. We can talk about all the Foucault pendulum and all the arguments for heliocentrists if you'd like. But I think that the earth is the center of God's attention and may actually be the center of the universe, even though it's not the center of our solar system. There'd be two different things. As far as we know, we look in all directions and see stars equally spaced on all directions. So the earth may indeed be the center of the universe, not the center of the solar system. That's the difference.
Okay. So in your view, then, it's not that science really had nothing to do with changing people's views on the shape of the earth and the relative orbit around?
I would say people have taught things that are wrong throughout history, which is why I'm here tonight to straighten this out. But that is not a reflection on the Bible. It's our interpretation of just because some people teach things doesn't mean the Bible teaches things, and that's the confusion. So there may be some people who have taught different things throughout history, that are simply wrong. The Scriptures is what we have to take as our rule of faith and practice, not the current teaching going around. And you mentioned, I guess I don't know if it's rebuttal time, but 30 million species. That's come up several times tonight, and I strongly disagree. The Bible told him to take the different kinds. There are about 8,000 basic kinds of animals in the world. God told Noah to take those in whose nostrils was the breath of life and those on dry land. And the number 30 million includes fish and includes insects, which didn't have to go on the ark. About 8,000 kinds of animals is all that's necessary. Adam could have named them in 2 hours. To say 8,000 words at 100 words a minute. I speak 300 words a minute when I get going fast. At 60 words a minute, you can name 8,000 animals in 2¼ hours. So Adam didn't have to wait all day to find Eve. A couple hours.
Wow. He's very patient. Okay.
All right. I've been looking through the questions, so I think we're supposed to be in the rebuttal phase. Although I've heard you talking a lot, Dr. Hovind. So do you feel like you've accurately, let's see, rebuttal is actually, Jaymen, it's your turn to rebut Dr. Hovind's, but I guess the question is do we feel like we've covered this issue? Or do you want to rebut what he said?
Which issue?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna take a leap then, and we're gonna take some of the questions from the audience, and what's going to happen here is I'll ask the question, and you'll both get about 2.5 minutes to respond. All right, and so the first question, Dr. Hovind will get to go first, and the second question, Jaymen, you'll get to go first. We have quite a few questions on dating, scientific dating, and where that fits into this whole argument. And instead of asking an exact question, I figured that just talking about dating and where it fits into the young Earth, old Earth debate would probably be enough lead for the both of you.
I don't date, I'm married.
Dr. Hovind, would you like to start talking about the scientific dating method as it relates to the age of the Earth?
Scientific dating, like using the internet or something. No. Go ahead and get my slides.
You're determined, both of you, to be funny, huh?
Okay. I cover carbon dating particularly, and several of the common dating methods on my video 7. I won't have time for that in 2.5 minutes, but back in 1949, when carbon dating was first invented by Willard Libby, you have to understand, way before that, in 1830, the geologic column was invented. And dating is really done by the geologic position, which the geologic column doesn't exist anyplace. But That's another long story. Carbon dating didn't work in 1949. The lower leg of a mammoth dated 15,000 years old. The skin dated 21,000 years old. In 1963, it still wasn't working. A living mollusk shell dated 2,300 years old. It is still alive, okay? In 1970, they said if a carbon date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it doesn't entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. If it's completely out of date, we just drop it. They pick the dates they want. 1971, a freshly killed seal was carbon dated at 1,300 years old. 1975, one part of a mammoth is 40,000 years old, another part's 26,000. This is coming from the same animal. In 1981, they said no matter how useful it is, the radiocarbon method is still not capable of giving accurate and reliable results. There are gross discrepancies. The chronology is uneven and relative. The accepted dates are actually selected dates. This whole blessed thing is nothing but 13th century alchemy. It all depends upon which funny paper you read. Living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old. We can go all through history. I mean, it gets worse, okay? 1992, they got two mammoths, 22,000 and 16,000. The mammoths were buried side by side. In 1996, they got carbon dates from the same sample ranging from 53,000 to 27,000. That's a 96% error. This is not science. Carbon dating, potassium argon dating, rubidium strontium dating, doesn't matter. They're all based on obvious assumptions, which the evolutionist doesn't like to admit normally. They said in the last 2 years we got an absolute date for the Gandong beds. It has the interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. Well, that's an absolute date, all right. They dated lava from Mount St. Helens, just erupted, which uses a different method, uses potassium argon dating. And dating, we could spend 2 days on this, but dating lava from Mount St. Helens, fresh out of the volcano, gave ages of ranging from 350,000 to 2.8 million. It should have been 0. Okay, it doesn't work. One experiment's worth a pound of theory any day, and I can tell you from the experimental perspective, it doesn't work. Okay, because of the assumptions it's based on. Thank you, sir.
Well, there are a couple of interesting points brought up there. One is, first I'm going to address carbon-14 dating. Let me just be clear here. Carbon-14 dating has very little to do with dating the age of the Earth. Its half-life is too short. It's a few thousand years. It's about 5,700 years. It's far too short to give any kind of meaningful date for geologic purposes. So carbon-14 dating, that's why they don't use it for rock dating or for fossil dating in general. Occasionally they do, but most of the time they use it for organic rotting material. That's why we were seeing pictures of buried mammoths and things like that that were buried in the ice. It's more useful for that, but it is inherently less accurate than the roughly 40 other methods that are out there. There's many, many radiometric dating methods. I'm not a geologist, but I do know, the little bit that I do know is that carbon-14 dating is way over-referenced. It's not really relevant to dating the Earth. But the methods that are much more reliable, and they're based on very sound science, which is one of the 4 fundamental forces of nature, the weak nuclear force. That governs how atoms decay, and it's very easily demonstrable in a lab. It's been proven repeatedly, and yes, there are some things that can throw these measurements off, but they're pretty well understood at this point. So I don't want to get too technical, and somebody graciously pointed that out. So the point of radiometric dating is to be able to take an element, and by measuring how much of its parent material, for instance, a radioactive material, has decayed. And we know how long the half-lives are for the different materials. So of the 40-some different methods, they match pretty closely on the age of the Earth, and carbon-14 dating is not used in general for dating very old things. So, thank you.
Okay, if I could get my slides on. One of the problems, I think you've been taught all through your education, as was I and as have many people, that the geologic column is something we can rely on. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these different rock layers. And you've been taught, and I was taught, that these layers are different ages, and that's simply not true. the things are really dated by the geologic position, and I can show you many examples of what are called polystrate fossils, petrified trees connecting these layers.
Dr. Hovind, the intent was that you both get 2.5 minutes to answer the question,
it's over with?
And then we move to a new question. However, you have anticipated the next question,
okay,
which was to discuss the geologic column and how it fits into discussions of the age of the Earth. Okay. However, it's Jaymen's turn to go first.
Jaymen's turn. Go ahead. Turn right off.
Okay. So do you have a specific question? Or
I don't have so much a specific question. I have several questions up here. They all relate to the geologic column and how this fits into either a young Earth or an old Earth, that kind of thing. So if you can just kind of take that as a subject.
Yeah. Sure. I'll give you the extent of my understanding, which is not a lot. So the way that I've been taught, and yes, I do trust some of my education, is that the geologic column is not one of these voodoo science areas. There are such areas. I'm afraid that the geologic column is pretty well accepted worldwide, and it's not just accepted by geologists, but it's pretty much accepted by all the major disciplines of science. Now, one thing that comes up pretty frequently is what you see in textbooks. And we saw many examples in newspapers and textbooks of bad information that's come out. And here's a news flash. Bad information is often put out. And you know what? That's not necessarily evidence from science. That's oftentimes it's misinterpretation of the facts by journalists, or it's oftentimes the agenda of humanistic textbook writers. And it's really not any reflection on the disciplines themselves. So if there's bad information in textbooks, and I haven't seen too many recent textbooks up there. I saw a lot of 1960s era, 1970s era examples, but if there's bad information in there, there's a good reason for that. A lot of times they have a pretty overt agenda and towards evolution, and I don't believe the geologic column, although reliable, supports evolution.
Okay, I get to answer that one, right? The geologic column was invented in 1830 by a guy named Charles Lyell. They gave each of the layers a different name and age and an index fossil, like maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park. The geologic column does not exist any place on planet Earth except the textbooks. The only place you'll find it is the textbooks. This is a textbook author admits if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately no such column exists. And by the way, I have textbooks clear up to 2004 I can reference if you'd like. They all teach this, even today. It's not from the 1960s, okay? If the geologic column existed in one place, it would be 100 miles thick. My question would be, if the layers are really different ages, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? Don't you think it's going to rain once in a while in 10 million years, waiting for the next layer to be set on top? It just simply doesn't happen. The fact of the matter is the geologic column is a joke. It doesn't exist anyplace. It's based on circular reasoning, and the fossils are dated based upon which layer they're found in, not by potassium-argon dating or uranium-lead dating or any other dating method. Fossils are dated by the geologic position, which is based on circular reasoning. This guy says, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. Radiometric dating would not have been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. So your radiometric dating can't even be done without the assumption that the geologic column is correct. And the geologic column was invented in 1830 by Charles Lyell, who hated the Bible and influenced Charles Darwin to turn away from the Bible. So this guy says the rocks date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. I think the cheese fell out of this guy's sandwich is what I think, okay? It's all based on circular reasoning. I covered that in great detail on video number 4. So it's sad that students are being taught that the layers are different ages. We have just enormous evidence that they simply are not. As I was going through earlier, the polystrate fossils show, and one good experiment is worth a pound of theory any day. All over the world, petrified trees are found standing up, connecting these layers. I don't think it's logical or scientific to say the layers are different ages. Those trees are going to rot and fall down. I think it's much more logical scientifically to say the layers formed rapidly before the tree had time to rot. Now the Bible says Noah's in the ark for a year. That's plenty of time to deposit thousands of layers of sediment. Thousands of feet of sediment can be deposited in 1 year. And these petrified trees in the vertical position totally discredit the geologic column.